Sunday afternoon.
We'll go ahead and get started. I think we have a few seats left there in the back, and always the front row is available. Welcome to Kauffman Museum this afternoon. My name is Andy Schmidt-Andrus, and I'm the director here at Kauffman Museum. I hope you've all gotten a chance to look at the current special exhibition, The Magic of Things, 5 Continents, 25 Centuries, 125 Years of Collecting. In the exhibit, I would encourage you to take the time to leave your comments and thoughts at 2 different areas. You'll see right at the beginning or the end, whatever you want to, however you want to treat it. There is a panel there looking for your suggestions, and then also if you look near the motorcycle, there's a book that is where we are collecting motorcycle stories. So if you have a story to share, if you rode a motorcycle on a special trip or a special motorcycle on a not so special trip, or whatever your motorcycle story entails, there's a spot for you to write that down. Also, if you use Facebook, we'd ask you to like and share any of the Kauffman Museum posts, especially those posts that announce different programs that we have. There are 2 mini exhibits that are related to the magic of things. One of those exhibits is at the Newton Public Library. We also have a forthcoming exhibit at the Mance Library on the Bethel College campus, and that's on the mezzanine level of the library. Upcoming Sunday afternoon at the museum programs that we're going to have in association with the magic of things are on April 3 and on May 22nd. April 3 we'll be hearing from John Janzen, and on May 22 we'll be hearing from Rachel Pannebecker and David Kreider. And all of those folks listed are guest curators of the exhibit or were very involved in the exhibit. Today, we have the pleasure of hosting and hearing from the lead curator of the exhibit, The Magic of Things, and that would be Reinhild Janzen. And Dr. Janzen is Professor Emerita of Art History at Washburn University. In looking through her vitae to prepare this introduction, I got a chance to count because she's done lots and lots of things. And I learned that she is the author of over 75 publications, has presented at least 100 public programs, that's in addition to teaching many classes, and has been the curator of at least 25 exhibits. And many of those exhibits she created while she was working here as curator at Kauffman Museum from 1983 to 1993. A few of the titles of those exhibits that you might recognize are The Art of Sharing, The Sharing of Art, Threads of Life, Mayan Clothing from Guatemala, and Victorian Sentiments, Beauty and the Beast. In addition to curating exhibits, while she worked at Kauffman Museum, Reinhild authored the book Mennonite Immigrant Furniture with her husband John Janzen. She launched the field trip programs that we are actively using now. So I would have to do some math to figure that out, but is that close to 30, 40 years we have that same base for many of our school program field trips that we have. And Reinhild started the Sunday afternoon at the museum lecture series, which you're attending today. When Reinhild retired from her position in art history, in the art history department at Washburn, the university president shared these words: Dr. Janzen has a passion for high-quality student performance. She has proved to be a model of academic integrity, high standards, and service to the profession. Today, Reinhild will discuss artifacts that play significant roles at critical moments in the human life cycle. Welcome, Reinhild.
Thank you, Anne. I never looked at my vita in terms of the numbers that Andy put together. I don't like numbers, I like maybe dates. But So it's lovely to be here. Welcome on this rainy day. In German, we call this kind of weather museum weather, because when when it rains, you don't go walking in the woods, but you certainly go to a museum. And it's nice to see so many familiar and friendly faces here. So the artifacts that I chose to include today are part of the exhibit theme that we call the power of ritual. And like Andy said, those objects play a significant role at critical moments in the human life cycle. In that exhibition, The Power of Ritual, there are 9 objects that come from Africa, specifically Egypt, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Uganda. And then 5 are exhibited from Taiwan, and 4 others were made and originated here in the United States. But I will introduce you specifically to ritual markers of twin births in Uganda and the so-called hell scrolls, sounds terrible, used in mourning rituals among Chinese Buddhists in Taiwan. And let's see, if we have here the map of Africa so that you can quickly situate Uganda. Most of you know, but just in case, right here. This map, by the way, this parenthesis, is the map of decolonization of Africa. So the colors indicate the years when these countries, became independent. And Uganda belongs to the huge block of those that started becoming independent after 1959. I knew from experience, let's see if I can do this, yeah, there it is. From experience in other African countries, other African settings, that the best place to experience and see authentic local culture is the marketplace. So in 2014, John taught a course in medical anthropology in Uganda in the town of Gulu, at the University of Gulu, and I was alum. And at that occasion, I asked the secretary of the anthropology department there to explore the town's huge, really huge central outdoor market with me. I was not looking for anything specific, since I did not know the local culture or the spiritual culture of Uganda. But soon I saw a very curiously shaped pot among all kinds of household pots. I don't know if you can see it, and that's right up there. You see? We'll look at that a bit more. So these are all utilitarian pots, but I thought, what do you do with that one that has 4 openings? A vase? Nah. Anyway, so it sat amongst all of these others. And this is the moment that what I call the magic of things was at play. The unusual form, the unknown function attracted me. I recognized a unique opportunity to collect these artifacts, or some like that, for Kauffman Museum to complement a collection of ritual objects used in healing rituals that I had assembled the previous year in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So I asked my Ugandan friend to inquire about the price for each of these clay vessels that I found in this market, because I feared to be overcharged because of me being a white foreigner in a setting where a white person simply signals money. So in 2000, at the 2014 exchange rate of 2,750 shillings for $1, I paid about $26 for 5 handmade clay pots that are all used together in particular ritual. So then I needed to learn now what are these objects used for, and just how these are used when a mother gives birth to twins or triplets, or in rare cases quadruplets. And one of John's students offered the following explanation. She said, at such an occasion, a special beer of millet is brewed but not strained. The elders who are present for the ceremony drink this beer from the mouths, they call them mouthed vessels, not spouts, but mouthed vessels. Then, so they drink the beer, the unstrained beer, then spit the hulls at the shrine in the family compound, where the umbilical cords are buried, to give their blessings to the twins. So they spit that out to give the blessings to the twins. For boy twins, and don't ask me why, but she said for boy twins they spit 3 times, for girl twins each person spits 4 times, for boy-girl pair twins they spit 3 times for the boy and 1 time for the girl. She offered no explanation, and I had no occasion to pursue this interesting number symbolism here. So then the other part that is very essential, and this is where the cooking pot comes into play. You have to cook chicken in a clay pot that must be new, and afterwards, after the meal, this pot is never used again. Instead, it is placed on the shrine in the family compound, preferably new clay bowls, and you see one of them that broke in transport, this one here. Preferably new eating bowls are used at that time, and they are allowed to be used continuously after this by the household. So now the pot with the 2 openings is for the gods that are associated with the twins. It is also used to perform rituals for a child believed to be a twin, but whose twin had what they call disappeared. And later, the 2 umbilical cords are buried at the shrine, showing that the family recognizes the lost child as part of the family. A 3-mouthed, it's hard to say. Say that 3 times in a row. A 3-mouthed pot is used for the birth of triplets, using the same proceedings as for the twin ceremony, but it is also used, interestingly, when there is a breech delivery. Again, I have no explanation why that is. Well, one explanation is, it is believed that such a child possesses a very dangerous spirit compared to the twins. It is believed that if the ritual is not performed for such a breech birth, calamity will befall the family. Such a child's umbilical cord is also buried at the family shrine. Now it comes to the 4-mouthed pot, which functions in 3 different birth situations. First, in the event that the second set of twins is born in the same family, so one set, and then after a bit another set of twins, a 4-mouthed pot is used to celebrate, either a single set of twins or then the second set of twins. In the very rare case of birth of quadruples, the 4-mouthed pot is used again in the same ritual proceedings. Now, after the performance of these multiple birth rituals, these vessels are kept at the shrine where the umbilical cords are buried, and this shrine is managed by the family elder. This is a photograph I took of village, of such a family compound. And it's not the whole, it's just part of the beautiful circular thatched buildings. So somewhere there would be a family shrine where these pots and the umbilical cords are kept. Oroma Grace concluded her explanation that the bones of the deceased twins are later exhumed from their grave to place them into a clay pot, again, which must have holes, probably for drainage, has to have 3 holes, and that pot in turn is also placed on the twins' shrine in the family compound. I first, I will say, before I go into my first experience of twin birth in Africa, this photograph shows you a woman carrying in a procession a twin pot. I have no explanation for what procession this is, but it could be a funeral procession, because there's also an image carried, or it could be a political, for a candidate procession. It could be that she is a twin and honoring the other twin, or that she's the mother of a twin, so that's why she would carry that twin pot. So I first learned that the birth of twins in Africa is understood and celebrated as an event far more extraordinary than in Europe or North America, as far as I know. When John and I lived in the village of Kisiasia in the lower Congo in 1965, we, one evening, and I noted it was on a May 15 early morning, shortly after sunrise, we heard many hours of singing coming from the neighboring hilltop, the same song repeated in high-pitched women's voices. We asked finally about the cause of this unusual, prolonged singing early in the morning, and we learned that a woman had given birth to twins during the night, and the singing was to appease the infants so that they would not become jealous or envious of each other. It is said that very often one of the twins develops a bad character because he or she always feels disadvantaged by the other. Is there anybody in the audience who has raised twins? That would be an interesting discussion for a moment. So earlier, John's first encounter with rituals surrounding the birth of twins. So this is the Congo mother of twins that we visit in that same May in the plantation of her husband, who was an herbal healer, so mother of twins, Congo in 1965. This is a photograph John took when he was a Pax boy in the Congo in 1958. He worked at the Mennonite mission Kamayala as a Pax boy. There he asked for permission to photograph a mother and grandmother of the Chokwe people celebrating the successful birth of twins. And here they powdered themselves with white chalk to signify joy, purity, and very importantly, ancestral benediction. The Congolese artist Bakala Kaluni Daniel in 2011 carved this small relief sculpture of a mother with twins. It echoes very much the photograph, that we took, that you just saw in the other image. She's nursing her infant twins. She's surrounded, this is significant in terms of rituals surrounding twin birth, the celebration. You see that she's surrounded by drummers and by people with shakers and women singing. Yeah, she's crowded in with, surrounded by musicians. making music and they're dancing. And this would be suggestive of a celebration of the birth of twins among the Congo people. Not only is the nursing of twins an image of female fecundity and the continuity of life, but the artist also visualized that, as anthropologists John Janzen and Wyatt McGaffey have noted, twins signify an auspicious birth in Congo society. As in Judaism and Islam, ultimate power of the divine cannot represent it materially. So twins then represent mediation to the divine or with the divine because they are at the threshold where ultimate unity and power becomes diverse and may be accessed. By this very fact, parents become priests of this mediation between the material and the immaterial, the visible and the invisible. Just for comparative purposes, when you walk around the permanent exhibition here, some of you might be familiar in the section on the Cheyenne people, or the Sisters, as they call themselves. There's a section on childhood, and you see the Cheyenne beaded turtle, which is an amulet, a container for a piece of a navel of an infant, and it is worn by this growing child to protect the child and to make sure it is well and healthy and grows up. The turtle is associated with longevity and with health. And the lizard, this would be for boy. The lizards are for girls, for the umbilical cord. The other significant object, also alluding to the parents imploring divine protection for their newborn children, is the richly beaded cradle board that carries literally and symbolically an image of the universe, the order of the universe, on the top of the head of the child. Yeah, so this is the most sacred symbol among the Cheyenne people. It's their understanding of the order of the universe. The very center among these 8 directions, this black square here, that signifies Maheo, the supreme being of the Cheyenne people. Now we're going to leap across continents and oceans to arrive in Taiwan, which is to me foreign territory. I have never been there. Other people, but this is not yet Taiwan. We will be shortly arriving. We make an overnight stop in Europe. And the reason we do that is because I just wanted to put the idea or the questions of what happens to the soul of a person after death. Does some form of life after death continue? And how does the soul enter that other realm? These questions, I just wanted to introduce those with a framework that we're familiar with, and that is the Christian, Western European Christian framework. And so maybe people know this, but I'm speaking of the Last Judgment. So if you visit the Cathedral of Saint-Lazare in Autun in France, it was built in the 12th century, and you're greeted as you enter through the front portal. Imagine the College Mennonite Church on its front portal with the Last Judgment. It puts the fear of God into you, right? At least it did me as a child. It was the first Lutheran fire and brimstone sermon that I was subjected to. But there's the last judgment. And of course you have the huge figure of Christ dominating. You have on the left of Christ a battle between Saint Michael and the devil, right here, with a scale, and they're fighting over the souls. The light ones in this case are the saved ones, and the sinners are in the ones that the devils are yanking into a very gruesome mouth of hell. Here are the people who are rising on the day of judgment from their graves, from the dead. And so throughout the Middle Ages and way into the Baroque era, you find these images of the last judgment greeting the believers. This is a detail by a 15th century Dutch artist from a huge altarpiece in a chapel in the south of France, in a hospital. And here you again see this theme of the Last Judgment, Christ on top, the ultimate judge, and then Saint Michael doing the actual judging who gets saved and who gets condemned. On the right side, of course, always the ones who are blessed and be saved and are received in heaven. And on the left, the sin here, where it's very heavy, they are condemned basically to hell on this side. And it's inscribed with the words virtue on the right and sin, peccata, on the left. And then we have in contemporary Germany, from a Berlin newspaper from November, October 1921, St. Peter is confronting, as the guardian of heaven, a poor guy who has just arrived, and Peter tells him, okay, first of all, there's a sign, and it says, we only accept 2G masks. Is that the number that we have here? So that he has pinned up. He tells this guy, what? You are not vaccinated and you haven't gotten better yet? I'm sorry, but Zutritt verboten. No entry. And this gesture tells you all. So then the general text is, for those who are not vaccinated, the times are becoming more and more difficult. So that's too bad. But here we continue with this idea of the last judgment, of there being a hell and a heaven. All right. So that is introducing us to this concept that we will now explore in Buddhism in Taiwan. So, Kauffman Museum owes a large portion of its holdings to Mennonite women and men who worked eyes wide open to the culture in which they found themselves at Mennonite missions, Mennonite Central Committee projects far-flung around the world. And that is why 10 extraordinary Buddhist paintings can tell us today about the Chinese Buddhist idea of judgment after death. Lloyd Kauffman, the second son of this museum's founder, a farmer and a mechanic in South Dakota, volunteered during his retirement years to be head of the physical plant at the Mennonite hospital in Hualien. I don't know. Does somebody know how to better pronounce the town?
Hualien.
Yeah? So you see it very easily right here on this lovely coastal line. He purchased those around 1976 from a Chinese antique dealer in Hualien by the name of Lloyd. And these portable paintings, the so-called hell scrolls, delineate in pictures and words a vision of the soul's journey through judgment and purgatory toward reincarnation. At this, when I received those as a gift from Lloyd for the museum here, he told me that at that time in Taiwan, according to him, only about 2 to 3% of the population were Christian. So he was really embedded, in a Buddhist surrounding. The Buddhist hell scrolls, these portable paintings, are typically displayed at funerals as a part of the service. The standard set of 10 hanging scrolls depict the 10 kings who are the judges of the dead in East Asian Buddhism. Here is a photograph of a funeral service, mourning ritual actually in the deceased's home. You have a lay Buddhist priest with an assistant and with food offerings and incense, etc. And you have one of the family members bowing to the photograph of the deceased in this shrine. He wears a white scarf because white is the color of mourning in this setting. And the hell scrolls are displayed on either side of this shrine. Here you see that a little bit better. This is again taken by an American who also collected hell scrolls in the middle of a mourning or funeral service, and it is the custom that you hire as many musicians as you can to create a more spectacular or more high-class funeral. This guy manages to blow into his horn and smoke a cigarette alternatively. But the hell scrolls again are displayed on either side, and you see in the back of him there is a large scroll hanging, and you see the king of hell on the right with one of the officials who assist him and they have their judgment books in front of them that are recording all the good deeds and the bad deeds of the deceased, and they are deciding on what kind of punishment the sinners get and what kind of rewards the good people get in the rest of the scroll. So this is sort of a little bit of context for the use of these scrolls. The first scroll that we have here on exhibition in the set of 10 that Lloyd Kauffman collected is this scroll that is depicting the court of the first king of hell. And what I want to say here is that before a soul is permitted to transmigrate to the next life, the soul is tried by a different king each week for 7 weeks. So every 7 days you have a ritual and you are judged by a different king. You are sent then to the 8th king on the 100th day, to the 9th king for judgment after a year, and finally to the 10th king of hell 3 years after death. Nowadays, though, I learned that memorial calendar is shrunk a little bit because it's just not practical for our days too. Bernd, are you timing me?
No, I'm taking occasional pictures.
Thank you. No, so sorry. Am I okay?
Yes.
All right. Okay. So, what we want to see here is, here in this scroll, the journey of the soul begins. He has a name, and he is called the judge of the storehouse. It is his duty to weigh sins committed against merit accumulated. He presides at his desk over on the right, and he is assisted by two officials. A magistrate is sitting at his desk to the left of him, along with another assistant. Both of the desktops hold papers and writing tools. Overlooking the scene in the left corner, way up there, is a Buddhist, here, is a Buddhist saint called a Bodhisattva, and there are many of those, and they are identified like saints with by a halo as a Bodhisattva. And that Bodhisattva is trying to be very helpful for the souls. A Bodhisattva is a being who is close to enlightenment, but who voluntarily remains on earth to help others achieve enlightenment. In this context, the Bodhisattva who is present here is the one that is called the Bodhisattva of infinite compassion. Now, below the king and the official, you see stylized clouds below the Bodhisattva, and at this level you see another line of stylized clouds, and you see that in many of the scrolls. The motif of these stylized clouds helps to indicate changes in time and place. So, you know, according to how the story moves along historically and in space, so by way of sort of separating the various episodes. So what we see here then is figures in the middle ground, very orderly. These figures here are all identified by a scroll in terms of their good deeds, and they will, you know, probably progress fairly easily toward rebirth. And then we have two figures that stand right over here. And what is also possible is a negotiation between the living and the powers that be, to petition for lessening of a punishment by offering a gift to the temple. So that there are lots of stories told here. We see further down a bridge known as the Golden Bridge of the Virtuous, going toward the so-called Western Pure Land. We would use the word heaven, but that concept really does not exist in the same way in Buddhism. The West was considered a sacred location, and the term heaven is simply a misnomer and implies the Christian concept of heaven. So the people on the bridge have done many good deeds and do not have to suffer the punishments of purgatory. Bridges, by the way, in the health scrolls are recurring motifs, and they're both signifying a liminal space, a space, you know, between one way of being and another way of being. But also a bridge is always also a connecting space. Now, the literary sources for these complex, for this complex iconography of hell scroll paintings, are Buddhist sacred texts known as Sutras. And some of these texts, published as so-called good books, were illustrated with woodblock prints. And you have here on your left an example of such a book, a woodblock print in such a book that was published around 1850. And they were available for free for the public. So artists, folk painters had access to these and would, if they needed help, have a model after which to construct their hell scroll paintings. What fascinates me especially in this model for a hell scroll, so here you have the king of hell, judging. What is emphasized in this top part of the scroll is our instructions for the living to honor and to value the printed, written word. By so doing, much merit can be gained. Some of the texts here say, for example, respect the character's fairness. That means because paper with writing on it was considered sacred according to Confucian principles, people were encouraged not to casually discard such materials, but to burn them as one would burn spirit money, to honor the dead, for example. We have such spirit money in one of our exhibits here in China. And then the image below here are, here is somebody making a gift of a book to somebody else, and here are two ceramic urns in which printed matter, printed materials, the written word can be burned or disposed of respectfully. Does that make sense? I like that. We throw too much away. And John Thiessen helps us to not do that. So, yeah. So that is a good deed, to give somebody something valuable to read, or give somebody a good book, or to be careful with the printed word. Those who respect paper, is one of the inscriptions here, those who respect paper with writing in it will have filial children and capable and virtuous grandchildren. Good advice. Okay, we will now turn to scroll number 3, which shows the court of the third king of hell, assisted by officials on either side of him again. This is one of several hell scrolls that show examples of good conduct in life which gained merit for the soul on Judgment Day. So, for example, in the upper left corner, two souls are floating on clouds toward the Western Pure Land, what we would call heaven, which tells us that they were good people. They can just go directly. The text explains these are people who in a previous life cultivated good deeds, established temples and monasteries. They obtained the golden body of Buddha. But right below, we have people coming into the scene from what is known as the city of wrongful death, right here. These souls are in trouble. They have all committed suicide by throwing themselves in the river, the text tells us, hanging oneself, throwing oneself onto rocks, stole seeds or embryos for one's own use. Below that is women suffering on the right corner, you see that in the detail, suffering in a pool of menstrual blood for their misdeeds. That is a punishment that is meted out in this purgatory scene. There's another fascinating story squeezed into this, and that is better visible right here. This whole scene. So one element of the story is this one here. What we see is a Buddhist monk. This is a very famous Chinese opera is built or based on this story of this monk Mulin on the shore of the pool of blood, extending his arm to reach the outstretched hand of his mother. He's trying to rescue his mother from purgatory. And right next to it is a group of people who are musicians in a funeral procession. One of the duties of filiality is to organize as splendid a funeral, I mentioned that before, as for one's parents as possible, including hiring musicians, we do that too, and even opera performance. I don't think we do that often, but it could be done. This is to attract as large a crowd of participants as possible. The more people honor the departed soul, the better for accumulating merit on the part of the deceased family. So the living are receiving merit for their time of judgment if they have acted, in a filial way toward their parents. There was also the belief that the noise of entertainment, like opera, would drive away bad spirits. So, double function. The next set of images Here I am giving you a comparison between one of Kauffman Museum's hell scrolls on your left, you recognize the style, and yet another king of hell judging, with a scroll of several that are in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York that are much older. So this is ancient history of the making of these funerary paintings. The one in the Metropolitan Museum that you see on the right was created in the 12th century, 800 years earlier. And it is similar in terms of the in the rough composition. You see again the carefully laid out desk with writing tools on part of the king with assistants, and then you see horrific, monstrous devils, if you will, or the police of hell that mete out punishment. And in this case, we see in both of these scrolls one of the punishments that is the burning of people or souls in what is known as the city of fire. And so people who have great sins are walled in here, and they're all set on fire, and here we have the same motif here. So I just wanted you to see that there are many of the stock motifs, if you will, in the iconography of hell scrolls. You have this very, very ancient tradition. What is different between the two is not only the age, but it is also two very different approaches to image making or to representation. The one on the right at the Metropolitan that figures is top class. In other words, by a highly trained court painter who signed his paintings. It is commissioned by royalty or very, very rich people. It is painted on silk. It is painted in a very refined style of representation. The composition hangs back, together far better than on the left. The one in Kauffman Museum, that set, is something that you and I and everybody else could afford. You go to a workshop, you know, set up with a master painter, well, a folk painter with lots of assistants, and they produce these things, and you pay very little money. The material is simply woven hemp, and then you have the cheapest paints that you could buy. So, you know, so in other words, what I'm trying to say by this comparison is that you have, you know, all kinds of people, all classes of people using these, but the product, you know, depends on how much money you have ultimately. Yeah, the Fire City. I think I will now maybe go to the next one. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Here in this particular health scroll, I wanted to point out two motifs that repeat a few times throughout history in the iconography. Here, the king is presiding again over the next stage of the advancement of the soul toward reincarnation. You have virtue contrasted with sin, merit with that which you must not do and for which you get punished. Again, you see the motif of the bridge. So somebody is doing a great work by building this bridge. They are in the middle of they have it almost complete. So the people who are involved with that, the people who sponsored that, will surely get straight to the Western land. Whereas the people who are standing on top of this building is known as the viewing platform, and that is the platform for viewing one's village, it is actually called, and that is really psychological torture. Souls are being punished by making you look back to your previous life, to your home village, to where you came from, where life was comfortable and beautiful, and to which you can never, ever return. Is that a punishment? I think so. So, yeah, that is also there. And a lot of the punishment, the tortures, you know, like pressing people to death, like here, was common criminal punishment in China. You know, it reflects the culture that existed, of course. I think what I have not yet mentioned is that the whole tradition or the concept of the Last Judgment has very ancient roots in China, and the Hell Scrolls, the content of the Hell Scrolls, is in a sense a synthesis. There are ideas that come together that are taken from Taoism, which has it plays a big role in around like classical antiquity, the time of Plato and Aristotle, the 5th century BC, yeah, or before the Common Era. And Tao, the word itself means a way or a path, and the ideas of Tao, of Taoism, are a way of bringing together ancient ideas that regard knowledge about humankind and the universe. So how you imagine that relationship. There was a Chinese philosopher at this time who wrote down these ideas by the name of Laozi, and his book that was very influential is known as The Way and Its Power. So it's The Way and Its Power. these ideas were absorbed by Confucianism, which Confucius lived at about the same time, and the Confucianism complex, but one of the key ideas is that the emperor ruled by the mandate of heaven. You know, that like the Habsburg emperors were crowned by the Pope, yeah, and so then that's, yeah. Or somebody walks around with the Bible upside down, this is a false claim. Now, we have, then in addition, so you have Taoism, Confucianism, and then you have Buddhism, which happens much later. Buddhism introduced into China in the 5th, 6th century by around 600 our time. We have Buddhism in China coming from India. And so these ancient ideas with Confucianism and Buddhist ideas fuse together and create basically the philosophy or the belief in this way of the soul's way that we see depicted in the Hell Scrolls. What I want to see now is, let's see, oh yeah, so here we come to the 10th scroll, the 10th hall of judgment, the final court of judgment. This king is named, and if you look at the building on the left, on the lintel, the Chinese characters say that this is the wheel-turning king. That is what his name means, or the king of the revolving wheel, which you see to the left below him in that detail. The king's palace warns, quote, and this is also in writing on the scroll, "Those who committed 10 unwholesome behaviors cannot arrive at the 10th court." Okay, you're already pretty selected if you make it to the 10th court. So if you have done the following, according to the Digital Dictionary of Buddhism, if you have committed the following, you can't come here. You have killing, stealing, is it debauchering? Debauchery? Am I saying that right? Lying. This is good. Ornate speech flattery. Ornate speech flattery. Boy, insult or abusiveness. Treachery or slander. Coveting. Becoming angry. Holding false views. No way you get here. Kind of like the 10 Commandments sort of echo through there. Then the next text here promises, those who cultivate good deeds will enter the circle of rebirth. Now, the scene on the upper left, at the level of the king or even higher, again separated by somewhat of a cloud motif, that scene is identified as the heavenly hall or the temple of heaven, and we see an actual temple way up in the highest background, which is echoes a very famous temple in Beijing. On the wheel itself, this wheel of karma, are written the words, the wheel turning platform. Now, prior to walking toward this rebirth, you know, the souls are coming from here, and they have to pass by a particular sort of a little stand that dispenses drinks, and the drinks dispensed there that everybody has to take is a drink for forgetfulness. Before you get reborn, you have to forget everything you did in your previous life, so you don't do the same dumb stuff over again. And not only that, let's see, they call it, oh yeah, it's Old Lady Meng. who presides there. She's responsible for dispensing a potion which induces amnesia, so the shades can be reincarnated and return to the world without fear of renewing old ties or avenging past wrongs. They must forget their previous life, and in case someone refuses to take the drink, she has wounds that force the liquid down your throat. And that is also depicted right here. So, I mean, these scores are very entertaining, if you will. So, at the top of the rotating wheel of karma are the souls that are reborn into the 4 classes of people. That is what you see right up here in the top path. These people are reborn into 4 classes of people. And these are, I love this, scholars, not merchants. Scholars. Then comes farmers. It's wonderful. Don't you agree? Scholars, farmers, let's see. Where am I here? Oh, then come craftsmen, and then come merchants at the bottom of the 4 classes of people. The essential stuff first. Scholars, farmers, craftsmen, merchants. Then in the next path, there are also human figures. Right below the 4 classes of people, you have widowers, widows, orphans, and beggars. You can be reborn that way. Then those creatures, we see animals here, mammals, those who have been born from the womb, is the text. Then below those come those born from moisture, such as mosquitoes and other bugs. And that is one of the 4 ways of being born into the 6 paths. You have below them born from eggs, like birds and fish, born, and then born, I already said, born from moisture. And then in terms of the top one, you have the celestials, and in contrast, then those who are suffering in hell forever. One thing I would like to add too, I mentioned the influence on Confucianism in the iconography of the Hell Scrolls. And this Confucian emphasis on obedience, on order, on strict government, on authoritarian government, on the heavenly institution of royalty is reflected in these, kings of heaven that preside over these judgments. Also, what was pointed out to me by an art historian scholar at the University of Kansas is that the clothing of the kings and the officials that assist the kings is inspired from the period of the Ming Dynasty, which is approximately from the 13th to the 16th century, and is based on costumes worn in Chinese opera. So there you see that connection between the paintings and the culture of Chinese opera. Now, in conclusion, I want to share a thought on this matter that John Janzen suggested. He's very good at synthesis. And that's how we complement, only on that side. But As is evident, he says, in these two sets of collections, the Acholi pots that you saw earlier, it was made by the Acholi people of Uganda, the Acholi pots of twinship and funerary Buddhist scrolls, and a few comparative examples that I put in. The Kauffman Museum collections, when subjected to serious research, offer remarkably rich insight into the life of people and cultures around the world and the magic of things used to express profound insights into the mysteries of life and death, visible and invisible, the here and now, and memories of the past. Thank you.
Entertain questions?
Yes, if I can.
Okay, Reinhild is open to your questions. I have a mic that I'll bring to you if you have something to ask or a comment to make. They're absorbing the information.
Right, yes, there is a question.
How would, is this turn on?
Yeah, you told it.
How would Martin Luther feel about all this, good deeds things that people go to heaven for here?
How does Martin Luther,
Yeah, how would he feel about this?
How would Martin Luther feel about this?
about this you mean the Christian idea of the Last Judgment?
No, not
No.
the judgment, but being rewarded for
Good
good
deeds,
deeds.
the emphasis on
deeds.
deeds.
The emphasis on deeds.
I'm not hearing this correctly.
The emphasis on good deeds.
I know, Joe. Well, ask him, what would you say? I did not bring Martin Luther into this reflection. I think he would be amused. He had a great sense of humor. He was very open-minded to many challenges.
I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
No, don't apologize. But that's beyond me at the moment. Yeah.
Other questions?
I'm just curious about the Hell Scrolls from Taiwan. Were they made at the time, about the time that the Mr. Kauffman, I don't remember his first name.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Yeah, you're asking about the date, approximately. Yeah. So I did not have a chance to ask him about it, and I have a feeling him not really being a scholar probably he didn't note that down, or he didn't ask his antique dealer. But the specialist at KU specializes in Asian art. I took all the scrolls up to the Spencer Museum to get the opinion of the experts there, because that's not a field that I'm familiar with. And he said that most likely they were done by the mid-20th century. So 1940s, 1950s, maybe a little bit older, but certainly not necessarily older than the 20th century. They are definitely used, so, and there was one motif that he's up. So I had the image here. I'm not sure if I can get it again, but there is one scroll that shows the burning, the good, proper burning of papers, written papers, or paper or books with characters. And those are modern 20th century wire baskets. And he says those are seen all over Taiwan, you know, as he knew it, or at the time of Lloyd Kauffman. And whereas remember when I showed you the image of the wood block print with the ceramic containers in which paper was disposed of properly, you know, that was a difference. But he emphasized that would be giving a hint in terms of the age of these scrolls. So their mid-20th century was his best guess. The thing, you know, if we had money to pay a conservator, what you can do is you can obviously you can analyze the paints, the chemistry of the paints. You can analyze that of the you know, the dating of the cloth, of the fibers. You know, it would be possible to come to a closer date. Does that answer? Yeah, okay.
Other questions? All right, I'm sure Reinhild is willing to stick around if people want to chat, so we appreciate that.
That would be just fine.
And
Yeah.
thank you so much, Reinhild.
You're so welcome.
Just a reminder, our next program is April 3, and just a note also that we've opened registration for Uncle Carl's camps. If you have young friends or young relatives that you'd like to sign up for camp, you can do that.